time to start our forum. Thank you all for coming tonight. The election is drawing close, and it's wonderful to see so many people who want to be informed before they make their candidate decision. I'm Verna Loreline, and tonight's forum is being sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lynn County. The League of Women Voters is an organization for men and women who want to be informed and active participants in their government, and we invite each one of you to consider joining the League. There is membership information in the back. This forum is part of our ongoing efforts to advocate and educate all the folks in our neighborhood and our community about legislative governmental issues. So we're glad you are here tonight. We welcome our candidates, Ms. Gisela and Mr. Olson, tonight. They are both running for office here in the 4th District?
4th District, yeah.
4th District. I'll give you a little information about how tonight's forum will go. We will start with opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. And then we'll have a number of questions. If you have a question for our candidates and you have not as yet written it out, please write it on one of these yellow forms and hold it up. A lead member will pick it up from you and take it over here to our question sorters. Our question sorters just check the questions for a couple of things. Legibility, so write as clearly as you can. We never present questions that are personal in any way, so all of our questions need to be issues-based. And they help me in terms of categorizing them a little bit to try to make things go more smoothly. I may not ask your individual question the way you wrote it. If we have a number of questions on the same topic, I will try to combine questions so that we can get as many topics covered as possible. I just want everyone to know the cameras in the back of the room. This forum is being recorded by Robin Cash of Neighborhood Network News, and it will be available to watch at neighborhoodnetworknews.com. And you can also access it from the League of Women Voters website. Here's a reminder for me and all of you, turn off your cell phone. Do you always forget that? I always forget. Yeah. So this would be the moment to turn off your cell phone. If you can't hear me, and some folks have already done this, let us know. We'll do what we can to make that work. A reminder that throughout the forum, there is no applause. There are no responses from the audience. We are here to listen to our panel members, and we want to give them the maximum time. Of course, at the end of the forum, if you want to express your appreciation to our panel members, we certainly can do that. I think we're ready to go. I should let you know that we have timers to help us stay on track. They will hold up signs when there are 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, when the time is up. And I need to tell everyone that when the time is up, we need to wrap up immediately. And if we don't, I will, in my most polite manner, say thank you very much. We need to go to the next question. Okay. All right? I think we're good to go. So we had a coin toss to see who would go first. Mr. Olson will have the first word tonight, and Ms. Gisela will have the last word tonight. So, Mr. Olson.
Thank you. Thanks for all of you being here tonight and joining in this debate. I've had the privilege of living in Cedar Rapids since 1961, except for 2 years in the United States Army. And I've lived on the west side for 20 plus years. I've been honored to represent the northwest, southwest side in District 4 for the last 3 3/4 years on the Cedar Rapids City Council. During this time, I was appointed to the Development Committee, Infrastructure Committee, Finance Committee, and this committee system that was established had made a difference in making the City Council more effective. I've appreciated the leadership of Mayor Ron Corbett in his working relationship and the rest of the City Council in their working relationship as we team together. We may not always agree, but we respect each other's opinions. One of my goals in running for the City Council was to prove you could have a business profession and find time to serve the city. I feel I've accomplished that. I've tried to work within the system as far as the Ethics Commission and other conflicts because of my profession to make sure that we can find ways to have people that have jobs and also address certain city issues. My past experience on commissions, boards, as an architect and a commercial realtor have been, I think, an asset to the City Council and to the citizens of Cedar Rapids. And I'm especially proud to be the representative as a veteran on the City Council for veterans issues and on the Memorial Commission. I set out 5 goals, and those were to continue the efforts in economic development, to make Cedar Rapids a competitive place, to continue to work on the paving for progress, to make sure that what the voters approved is how the money is spent. Work methods to get to the items on flood protection, monitor the design of Highway 100, and support the city manager in his efforts to make the city more efficient in its operations. As I travel the country, I'm proud to call Cedar Rapids my home. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Cazell.
Hi, my name is Lisa Cazella. I've been a resident of District 4. I lived in Time Check for 9 years and Cedar Hills for 19 years, and I've really grown to love and respect our district, which is composed of most of the northwest side and a little bit of the southwest side. I was a flood victim down in Time Check and tried to rehab my home, and I wanted to stay there. I ended up relocating back out to Cedar Hills, where I lived before I bought my first home in Time Check. As of the 2008 flood, I became a very strong advocate in city politics, starting out with advocating for the flood victims. And then I began watching funds roll in from the state and federal government and watching those being spent. And I have tried to share that and inform the public where our money's going. I think transparency is a very big concern in our government. I think if we had better transparency, we could have wiser spending and a lot less waste. Because I've seen the waste of our funds, I've also been an advocate for the taxpayers in regards to the local option sales tax extensions. I led the campaign in 2011 and also in 2012 to defeat the local option sales tax for 20 years and for 10 years. And the reason I did that was not because I was against flood protection or against money for roads, but I saw how the money has been spent in our local government level, and I did not trust that money to be spent wisely. So I was trying to protect the taxpayers in terms of giving the city another blank check. I look forward to helping you better understand who I am and hoping to be your new District 4 representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's begin with what might be a difficult topic, but one we have had several questions about. The topic of violence in our community. And Ms. Cazella, we will start with you. The question is, please tell us 2 or 3 specific actions, or at least your comments about what should be done to take care of the violence problems that we are experiencing in Central Cedar Rapids.
Well, I think the most important thing is to work at the grassroots level. I'm not a fan of consultants. I think the people in the neighborhoods know best what their gaps are and what their needs are. Unfortunately, our city hasn't been very effective at supporting the neighborhoods at a financial level. There's not any line item budget for neighborhoods. I think there are several ways to help curb the violence. One thing, I did serve on the Cedar Rapids Crime Stoppers Board. I'd like to be able to assist in increasing the rewards for the anonymous reporters of crime so that more people can step forward. I think my time is up. Oh, okay. There's also other issues in terms of the violence that will go into the Safe CR program. I'm sure that topic will be brought up soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Well, I think the important part of making the crime issue improve in our city is to build trust. And that's trust that's among the people that live in the neighborhoods that are impacted by the crime that is occurring, trust in the police department and how they may work together with the neighborhood to try and identify those that are creating the crime issues. I firmly believe that the stronger you have a neighborhood association, and a neighborhood watch system, the better the issues are in the crime, and working together and reporting crime through different means of letting people know who are the issues and how can we get them arrested and taken care of from these neighborhoods. So I think it's a trust, and it's working together and understanding that we all benefit or lose from crime issues. And so hopefully in the future, we can continue the dialogue that is now cranked up, all the meetings that are occurring, all the groups that are addressing crime. We need to work together.
Thank you. And we'll just stay with Mr. Olson for the next question. This one might be a more pleasant subject. Recreation. What are your thoughts about recreation centers in Cedar Rapids? And would you favor a particular center that would focus particularly on seniors or general recreation?
We're very fortunate in District 4 and the Northwest Quadrant to have the new rec center that will come online next summer. And it's a smaller rec center. And I think what I have felt after watching 15 and 5 try to put together a very large rec center in Ellis Park several years ago is the way we're going to make it cost effective is to bring the recreation facilities into the neighborhoods, work with the schools, and the rec center on the northwest side is that first tie where we're tying facilities together in different groups, which I think sets the example for the future, and that each of the centers works from youth to seniors, and so that the seniors can have recreational facilities in each of their own neighborhoods, and hopefully we can find a way to have a rec center in each of our quadrants, as we are very fortunate to have in the future in the northwest quadrant. And I think that will make a difference in providing more opportunities.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez.
I also served on the neighborhood planning process steering committee, and I went to all those meetings. This was after the flood in 2009. One of the main issues that was consistently brought up is that the people wanted neighborhood recreation centers. That has not occurred. As a matter of fact, now in 2015, we're just getting started on replacing the Time Shack Rec Center. I think that should have been a priority in the beginning of the recovery of the flood, because flood victims were on the ground trying to communicate with one another. Had we had that rec center brought back, even if it was in a temporary location, we would have been able to connect with one another better. I believe now I would support a multi-generational center. At the time of the flood, I did not support it because of priorities of housing and so forth. But we need to integrate youth and seniors. There is a high demand for senior programming as well as the youth program. I'd love to see the seniors out there square dancing and having card groups. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, we'll stay with you. Speaking about youth, we spoke about youth a little in the conversation about rec centers. This question asks, how would you attempt to keep young people in Cedar Rapids?
Well, I think that we're really lacking in family-based activities, and I think that's a real key in keeping them here and also keeping them involved in the community. One of the things that I would like to see is, I know we have what I am referring to as casino land, the property that's being held for the casino. I'd like to see a miniature golf course put there. I grew up with miniature golf courses, and they're exciting at night with all the statues and everything lit up, and the view that people passing by on I-380 could see. I think it would be very inviting. I think it's important to have family-oriented activities here that are affordable to everybody. And of course, the younger people are just starting out with their families, so that's how I would like to see the youth to stay here.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
One of the things that we face in our community is the fact that we have job opportunities and know people coming to our city to any great extent with these new lifestyle options that are happening around the country. And so it is important that we provide a good quality of life. And I think we're on the right direction in offering opportunities. We're creating trails, we're creating bike paths, we're creating different types of neighborhood living styles. We're creating what a lot of young professionals want, which is downtown living opportunities and other types of options that they see in bigger cities. We need to continue to encourage the arts community, the family communities, the different properties and types of things that people can do as groups and as families when they start raising that family, and try to make sure that the opportunities are here in comparison to those large cities, and then hopefully that will continue to attract what we need to build the Cedar Rapids of the future.
Thank you. While we're talking about quality of life issues, we have a question about the library levy. We'll start with Mr. Olson. It's a simple question. Do you support the library levy?
The answer is a strong yes to the levy. I have been to numerous meetings, and the results that are coming out of our downtown library and our West Side library are spectacular in providing a variety of services, not just the traditional library services, but community activities, community meeting space, computer centers, a lot of different things that are helping our citizens. And I think for us to have that attraction, bringing the youth in, we need to have quality facilities such as our two libraries. So again, it's a definite yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Cedar.
I'm opposed to the 27-cent library levy. I am in favor, though, of some sort of levy. We had a 4-cent levy that the voters approved for 10 years, and it expired last year. We were able to get through this year without that. Now that we have two libraries, that's where I come up with an 8-cent levy that I would like to compromise on. And the reason is, first of all, the people were pretty outspoken about not building this huge library. We were thinking ahead of the operating costs, but yet they still went forward with it. And I think that it's important to know that I don't think that we should be stuck with paying that. I think that somehow we need to groom that down. So also, we need to cut waste. There's been a lot of waste. We're actually paying Permar Security to pick up our books at the book drops like at Hy-Vee. I think we could utilize more volunteers in helping us cut that waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move, Ms. Gisela, to transportation. We have a couple of questions about public transportation in Cedar Rapids. This one is, what plans are in process for better bus transportation in Cedar Rapids? And this person mentioned a couple of items, in particular, return of transfers and student rates.
Return of what?
Transfers, so that if you ride the bus downtown, you don't pay another fee to get on the bus to ride to your destination. You have a transfer.
Okay. I'm not very familiar with this issue, but one of the things that I would like to see is that we get smaller buses. We have these huge buses driving around that are sometimes empty, and I think that's a big waste of money. I would like to see better bus routes, especially going out to Kirkwood. Unless they've improved since I taught there, there was a need for more bus routes there and assistance for the students. Another thing that I'd like to see is more of the bus covers for, and I don't know what the technical term is, but for when people are sitting out in the weather, we need to have more of those around to protect them. Thanks.
Well, I think the bus system is morphing currently with a variety of options to try and improve the usability of the bus system, make it easier to work with. The Economic Alliance and other groups are working to come up with better routes as we see the city is changing and how our buses are being used, and to try and improve the amount of cycling that occurs so that the busy routes have more buses and the routes that aren't quite as busy have fewer buses that go through. They're in the process of unveiling an app similar to Uber, where you can tell how far away the bus is so you don't have to stand outside and sort of guess when it's going to be there in different kinds of weather. And hopefully that will make the bus more convenient for different riders. And we just need to continue to make sure that we provide a quality service and offer different price options so people can use it. And the free Saturdays, I think, has been a success. And it's a way to encourage more people to experience the bus routes and to start using the system versus driving. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Olson, we'll stay with you. We have a number of questions about streets, which are, of course, part of our transportation system, this person says, what will you do to ensure that this district gets street repairs as needed? And this person says, and not continue to be overlooked.
Well, the city has set up a system of evaluating every single street in the city, and they're ranked through a series of systems so that the worst streets are fixed, streets that need rehabbing are done, and then streets that need maintenance to try and preserve them so they don't go into deterioration. And so what we're trying to do, and we have done, is set up a system that is non-political. It is based on street design and a plan that after 10 years of over $150 million potentially expended, our street system will improve. And that's one of the toughest things to do versus I'm saying that my street's the worst. And if you talk to different people in all 4 quadrants, there's a lot of streets where people say that. And so what we've tried to do is come up with a system so that there is a way to rank streets, and then every 2 years they're re-ranked so that we try and get that coverage. And the northwest side is going to have some major street projects that are on the horizon that will have a tremendous impact on this area.
Thank you, Mr. Cedar.
Well, this is one of the biggest reasons why I'm running for council right now. District 4 has been neglected in regards to getting our streets fixed. I have the 10-year plan on my website. I have the list of roads that are not being fixed in that 10-year plan, some of which are D Avenue, Gordon, and Jacqueline. I have an email from Doug Wilson, who oversees the Pavement for Progress program. It's a tongue twister. And he says that according to this objective grading, that D Avenue, Gordon Avenue, and Jacqueline are rated in the good condition range. Anyone who knows those roads knows that that's not true. There have been roads in our area. I just learned that are getting fixed. West Coast and Midway, they were larger projects. They've gotten shrunk down. And I just learned the other day after the infrastructure committee meeting that West Coast Road now will only be fixed from E Avenue to Plainview, 2 blocks next year. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question, a related question about sidewalks. There are sidewalks in this area that need repair. What will you do to encourage sidewalk repairs, Mr. Cedar?
Well, I think the markings of the sidewalk, I've gone around the city, or around my district, and a lot of them are pretty arbitrary. Some of them have been marked just when they're cracked and they're not a safety issue. If they're a safety issue, I think they need to be fixed. There are, however, a lot of sidewalks that were ruined because of city trees, and the city is not being open in terms of helping the property owner and saying, we're going to fix this section because it was ruined by our tree. They're fixing it, or they're telling them to fix it. They're putting the burden on the property owner and not offering these options. And I think that as a city, we need to be able to give more of a hand up than trying to make the average taxpayer pay for everything.
Thank you. Ms. Rose.
Well, I think the sidewalks has become an issue in a variety of things with our new complete street policy. And I'd just like to talk about some efforts that are occurring. The amount of street work has tripled in the last 2 years that is being accomplished through our public taxes to try and close the gaps, as I call it. Gaps that occur where people can't get from their homes to a park or to a school. And we've been receiving federal grants, we've been using city money, and then of course working to catch up on the backlog of streets that need repair through a system where you can get reimbursement for repairing your sidewalk up to 50%. We also need to work on understanding that even though 40% of the city does not have streets, that we need to come up with a creative way to utilize the policy and not put streets in areas or sidewalks in areas that are not appropriate. And so we're working on a variety of issues as this street sidewalk issue comes to the forefront.
Thank you.
Can I add on that issue, or?
In your closing statement.
Okay.
This person is asking about property owners, penalties for property owners. Will you support a shift from penalties and enforcement against property owners to cooperation with property owners to abate crime in Cedar Rapids? I'm wondering if this person is thinking of landlords.
I think, yeah, landlord nuisance, I think.
Nuisances, probably.
Can you repeat that? please?
Yes. Will you support a shift from penalties and enforcement against property owners to cooperation with property owners to abate crime in Cedar Rapids? And I'm guessing this person is talking about landlords and perhaps what we call nuisance properties, properties that need more maintenance than they are receiving.
Is that yours, Lisa? Is it Lisa's turn?
It's this.
I'm hoping that I understand the question better. The Safe CR program, I'm assuming that it's referring to. The criminal activity that occurs on a property needs to be assigned to the perpetrator of the crime and not the property owner. It also, actually, the Safe CR program also affects owner-occupied. To date, we have 92 owner-occupied properties that are deemed a nuisance. That is 48% of our properties. Right now, there's 202. And that is, unfortunately, and it's hard to go into it in just a couple minutes, but the nuisance properties are not deemed nuisance just because of criminal activity. It's also pulling in the Chapter 29, which has to do with building ordinances and mowing the lawn and so forth, things that shouldn't even be under our police department. And I have a stop.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
Well, 50% of my emails relate to nuisance properties, whether it's owner-occupied or rental or commercial properties. And so the new Safe CR program is morphing. It is, fortunately, in the Northwest Quadrant in District 4, out of all of the nuisance properties, we have the fewest of any quadrant or area in the city. And so I think it's important to look at the efforts to try and adjust. Now, we're just 2 years into the new Safe CR ordinance, and it's in the process, and we're trying to make it more friendly to landlords and to property owners to give them the time to correct their issues. And I think the effort that's going on now that will be coming for the City Council, hopefully late this year, will make a difference in how the Safe CR ordinance is perceived. But I think the important thing is it is having an impact. Most nuisances that are called in are repaired quickly by the landowner, and it has made a big difference in many of our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, we'll start with you. This is a related question, a question about property and housing. Talking about the Roots program, how has it helped and has it hurt the local housing market?
Well, the Roots program is coming to an end very shortly, but it has eventually, it will have up to about 800 properties that were constructed after the flood to replace housing that was destroyed. And the most exciting part is that in the areas of our flooded neighborhoods, we've seen young families moving back into these neighborhoods. The attendance at Harrison and Taylor School has increased, which we were concerned about those schools closing. And we have seen property tax values begin to increase now that these homes have been inserted. Other people are repairing their homes. And so out of the total of 800 over a 5-year program, we have approximately 2,000 transactions a year of existing homes. And so in comparison, yes, there will be 800, but it's out of approximately 10,000 homes that sell every year in the metro area. So I think it has had a minimal impact on the housing market.
Thank you. Ms. Cedar.
The Roots program. It's not just an infill in the, this is a misperception, it's not just the infill in regards to the flooded areas. There are new developments all over the city, even on the outskirts, north of Bowman Woods, clear out northwest of Stony Point, And so they have done development there, and then they come back in another round and called it Roots for infill, and these are infills and new developments. I think the Roots program has had a negative effect in general. There have been properties that used to be assessed at, say, $80,000, and now they're assessed at $110,000. So those specific properties, the value's gone up. But the problem is, and this was predicted, many of us flood victims kept saying this, our concern is that the rest of our property values have decreased, the average median household value.
We'll just let you hang on to the microphone.
Okay.
And this is one more question about properties, historic preservation. What are your priorities for the implementation of the city's historic preservation policy?
I think the city is pretty good at restoring our history. There is a concern that I had in my own neighborhood across from my flooded home. There's a beautiful historical church on G Avenue and 8th Street Northwest. It had already been rehabbed. They were already holding services, and then they decided to sell the property. I met with several council people and begged them to not demolish it. In the end, it got demolished, and the parcels were divvied up, and the properties were given away for free. But, so there are certain historical buildings that I think should have been restored and protected. And I am not in favor of the Knudsen building, spending all that money after this many years. But other historical properties, I think that it's been fantastic that we've been able to hold on to what we can.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
We are very fortunate in Cedar Rapids to have one of the most active historic commissions of any city in the state. And they have worked very hard to put together a historic plan for the city of Cedar Rapids, which I think will be favorably received by the city council. As an architect, I put properties on the National Register. I'm a part owner in 2 historic properties and understand the importance, but also the cost to maintain those properties. And so probably the most important thing, if we're going to preserve our history, is that as we go through this plan, that we, as a city council, try to come up with funding mechanisms to be able to close the gap. And whether that's through some tax incentives, but hopefully grants of dollars, so that we can assist groups that want to restore a church or other buildings to make it financially feasible. One of the things that occurs is that once you restore it, you have to maintain it. And a historic building is normally much more costly to maintain. So we need to make sure that as we restore buildings, it is a building that can be maintained for the future of our city.
Thank you. Let's change subjects a little bit again. This is a question about retail or commerce in our community. And this questioner wants to know, how do you plan to increase quality retail options in our city? Mr. Wilson.
Well, this is an area that is being addressed by the city aggressively over the last couple of years, and we're starting to see the results. The city has hired an analysis firm that allows us to put together data that we can then provide to potential retailers that the public would like to see in the city. And we are starting to see the difference in 3 or 4 different areas. Westdale, there will be some new announcements. The Berthel Fisher was just in with 3 or 4 new retail tenants. They're all new to the city. The Northtown, which is Hunter Parks project on Blair's Ferry, will be announcing a whole series of new national retailers that aren't in our market. And so we're starting to see a surge of these, and that's part of the quality of life, what people want to see to attract youth and to serve the people that live here already. And the good news about retail is it creates jobs, it creates property taxes, and it creates sales tax. Sales tax is what funds paid in for progress and our flood protection.
Thank you. Ms. Casella.
This is one of the areas that I feel like our city has overdeveloped. I was surprised to hear that the city council hired an analysis firm. I think that the retail should be driven by our needs, by the people wanting. We've got Pioneer Co-op now because people were wanting it. We didn't need to have a consultant figure out that we should bring it here. The commercial developers, if they're going to get all these tax incentives and so forth, I think they need to be recruiting their own tenants in their commercial properties. I do agree that retail is important, but also I kind of go back to, we need to have the money to be able to spend at these stores. If we keep paying more and more taxes, we're not going to be able to frequent these stores and support them to continue.
Thank you. Another question about commerce in our city. What is your position on raising the minimum wage in Cedar Rapids as is being considered in Iowa City? What is your position on the minimum wage?
Well, I think something like that is going to need to be driven kind of from the grassroots because it's going pretty slow at the State House. I know that this is one of the issues actually that is a concern for our youth. There's a lot of teenagers out there who aren't willing to work for, what is it, $8.50 an hour now, I think it is. And I don't blame them. People that are raising their families are working 2 or 3 jobs at minimum wage. When I was out there looking for work, there were $8 an hour jobs out there. That's just unacceptable. I would be in favor of increasing it just a bit and test it out. Probably make it have it be an option for some businesses. Maybe give somewhat incentives and see how that goes.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Well, this is a dialogue that's going on, of course, much further than Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You know, I support what's called a living wage, and there's a lot of debate as to what that is. But I would feel comfortable that the current minimum wage at $7.25, it has not been increased for many, many years. And I feel it's important that we look at options to allow that to increase and to do it statewide so there isn't competition as we're seeing in Johnson County between different cities, that some are accepting it, some are not. And so it's important that there is this dialogue. And I think it's time that we do adjust the minimum wage, and hopefully we can come up with a system where it adjusts every year through cost of living or some other methods, so that once this dialogue happens and a direction is done, we have a way to go. And with our low unemployment, for most businesses that are looking for that entry employee, most of them are paying substantially more than the minimum wage because they need to attract employees.
Thank you. One question somewhat related to this topic is about Freedom Festival. This questioner says the cost of the city's Freedom Festival has become prohibitive for families. Do you have a suggestion about how to improve this situation, Mr. Wilson?
Well, the Freedom Festival has been an event that has grown from a very small fireworks activity to a several-week series of activities. Some of those are free, and some things they charge for. And I think it's important that there is a mix of events, and there are costs associated. The city of Cedar Rapids, through its hotel-motel tax, has been supporting the Freedom Festival for years, and that support has remained consistent over the last several years. It has not increased. And I think this is one of the activities, I think Lisa mentioned earlier, that could be a very family-friendly event that occurs during the summer months and offer as many free or low-cost activities as possible. And then if there are some events, whether that's concerts or some of the events that surround that they do have to charge to cover the costs, then those are events that probably the Freedom Festival Committee would have to decide if they wanted to continue. I had the privilege of serving on that board for 3 years. It's a great group, and it's a great event for our city.
Thank you. Ms. Cedar.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think it is important that families do have affordable activities to go to. And the Freedom Festival actually is one that I have not been able to enjoy because of costs and so forth. I don't know enough to know how much the vendors are charged. It's something that I would need to look into, but I do believe that that is another activity, as Scott mentioned, that hotel-motel tax could help out with more.
Thank you. We have some questions about flood protection. Those of us who were in Cedar Rapids in 2008 are not surprised that we're still asking questions about flood. The first one, Ms. Gonzalez, how do you balance the safety of the extensive development activities in the time check area with the risks of there being no flood protection there for a number of years.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, apparently this person is saying that there is extensive development going on in the time check area, but the flood protection for that area won't be completed for a number of years. What are your comments about the risk that that brings to that development?
Well, I don't know of any extensive development that's happening in the time check area, so maybe somebody needs to enlighten the public on that. I do know that that's called the Greenway, and they're planning a soccer field and so forth. However, there is extensive development being done on the other side of First Avenue, where they're wanting to build the casino, where there's been restaurants and condos, lofts built. I have kind of a problem with putting a lot of money into development in the 100-year floodplain and then insisting on taxpayers paying to protect it. I think that there should be other options that close to the river, and I guess that's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Olson.
Well, I think that the one good thing that has come out of the flood protection system and the funding that has now been obtained to build it is that people are confident it will get built. And the funding streams are coming forward. They're actually ahead of schedule. We're generating more revenue than what was projected. And the development that is occurring is at risk of the developers. And for them to get a building permit, they have to flood-proof their building. They have to raise it up. If you go down to New Bow and look at the new 4-story complex there, it's up on stilts, up on a platform. Or you have parking underneath, like the new townhomes that are occurring over on 2nd Street next to Water Tower. So you have to modify the design because they do not have flood protection. They're doing it at their own risk, and in some cases they're having to buy flood insurance to protect that risk, which is required by the banks. And so I see it as a positive that development is occurring and not waiting for the 20 years for our flood protection system to be completed. They're confident it will be done, and it is making a difference.
I have to talk to my question sorters for one moment. You know what? I can't read this. So help me, okay? Can you rewrite it, or I'm sorry, my deciphering skills are limited. Okay, another question about flooding, and this is flash flooding in particular. So this person wants to know what the city is doing about flash flooding.
Well, for the first time in many years, we are assembling a master plan that identifies all flooding issues from the 90s, the 2000s, and of course the 2014 flash flooding event. All of these events over the years have been identified. They're going into a master plan that will allow us to prioritize and find funding sources to finally, after all these years, start attacking these issues. We've let them sit like we had with the streets, and now it's time to come up with a long-term plan, identifying priorities, determining how we're going to solve the issue, how we're going to fund it, and then to put a plan in place that we go through a process. And there's 52 projects or areas that have been identified where flash flooding has occurred, and we're trying to find funding. They total $52 million approximately. And so what we're trying to do is to find ways to fund it without making a major burden on the taxpayers. But I'm excited about this plan, and we're finally addressing long overdue issues.
Thank you. Ms. Susan.
Well, I think this issue can be addressed right now as we're working on our roads. I've been following a lot of road projects, and we are not installing the proper number of sewer intakes. If you drive around Cedar Hills, for instance, we have hardly any sewer intakes, and our roads just get flooded like crazy when it rains, when it downpours. So these road projects that we're putting in, they are putting in some sewer intakes, but they're not really increasing the quantity, which helps the runoff. Also, we need to clean out our sewers and the drainage ditches. We haven't been focusing on that. I've got some pictures on my website in regards to the need to do that. And I also want to caution that when it comes to flash flooding and people are getting flooded, we need to treat people fairly across the city. There was a lot of flooding on the northeast side a couple years ago, and they got no flood assistance at all. So, and unfortunately now precedence has been set by a recent vote by the council, but we also need to look at that.
Thank you. More questions about water. And we'll stay with Ms. Gonzalez. What are the plans for the 11th Street Northwest detention basin area and other detention basins up to Edgewood Road? Or in your case, perhaps, Ms. Gonzalez, we would say, what would you suggest?
On the 11th Street detention basin.
Right. Or detention basins all the way to Edgewood, I think.
Well, I don't think we have enough detention basins, actually. And when the Time Check Rec Center was approved to go next to Harrison, one of my biggest concerns was that they're going to be tapping into that detention basin and probably expanding, using some of it as a parking lot, because there's really hardly any parking there available. So I think it's important to protect the detention basins that we have. I was told by, can't remember his name, from the city, that that's the last detention basin or the last catch-all for in regards to the Vinton ditch. If we don't have these detention basins, actually, you know, it is going to cause a lot more flooding. One of the things after 1993 flood, the Stormwater Management Agency did recommend many things to Cedar Rapids to help with flooding, and one of them was to install more detention basins, which has not happened. We do need more around our new development too.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf.
I agree with Lisa. We have been not doing a good job of using city land where we can create detention and maintaining those detention ponds that we do have. And so there has been a concerted effort since the flash flooding and before, and that's part of this study I mentioned that will be coming out next year, is that we need to use detention to a greater extent. And we do have city lands along the Vinton Ditch, upstream, the 11th Street detention basin just got deepened, thank goodness, to help with flooding there through a state grant that was received to allow us to jumpstart that project. And there's 8 projects underway right now. Most are through detention ponds and working with them to improve them. Some of these projects from 20 years ago are where detention wasn't built, that was identified. And so I totally agree. We need to, this is the most cost-effective way to reduce flash flooding, is to get in there and get these detention ponds constructed.
Thank you. A note for you in the audience, we are coming toward the end of the questions that we have been presented. So if you have a question on your mind and you've been thinking about writing one, now is the moment. If you need a yellow slip, raise your hand. If you already have one, write your question and hold it up. We have 2 more. But let's talk for a moment more about water, this time in the form of snow. Mr. Olson, we start with you, I believe.
Okay.
Where are you going to put the snow on 3rd Avenue?
Excellent question. There is a plan being put into place. As you well know, we are experimenting with different types of bike lanes. The ones on 3rd Avenue are called a protected lane. There's other lanes that are along the sides of streets. And so the Public Works Department is preparing a plan to address where snow is piled to make that system work or not work. The good news about the different types of bike trails you see is they're painted. They're painted stripes. And the goal of this is to experiment with 3 or 4 different types of bike paths as we rework the streets and determine what is the best for specific areas and for the city of Cedar Rapids. And so there is a plan being developed, and it was talked about at our infrastructure meeting that they know they have to address that issue along 3rd Avenue, and I'm also excited to see how it's going to work. And so I look to how good our city public works is in creating that master plan to address our bike trails.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez.
I could probably have been the one to ask that question, so I don't know the answer to it. Sorry.
All right. Ms. Gonzalez, then let's talk about one-way streets. Aren't one-way streets interesting? Several people have asked some variation of this question. Some of our one-way streets are sometimes one way, sometimes 2 ways. It's pretty confusing. What do you foresee happening to solve that confusion?
Yes, it's very confusing. I've heard a lot of people saying that they're staying away from downtown now, which is a shame, because the city leaders have done a really good job of bringing downtown back. One of the things that I've noticed too in regards to the roads down there is they're not just changing it from one way to 2 lane, they're also taking a roadway out for a middle turn lane on 2nd Avenue on the island there. They changed parallel parking to angled parking. We're now down to only 2 lanes on that road, where before we had 4 lanes going to the west on that one-way street. It's confusing, I think it's unsafe, and I might just put in, if I got 15 seconds, that installing the stop signs in lieu of the traffic lights, I think I also foresee some safety issues, especially in the winter, when we need to stop at each intersection. Instead, sometimes the roads are too slick, and that can be very dangerous too.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
Well, the conversion is occurring, and it is confusing, but there is a master plan that eventually converts over a 5-year program our one-way streets to 2-way. The traffic counts aren't there to justify one-way streets. They haven't been since the mid-90s, and so a plan was developed 2 or 3 years ago to begin the conversion, and that is occurring. The confusion is caused because of the cost to cross the railroad tracks. It costs $250,000 at every railroad crossing to make the modifications to go to 2-way. The railroad won't pay anything, and so we're working on methods to fund that, to speed up that crossing cost, which will be funded as a part of our city effort. The lesser lanes are called traffic calming, to slow traffic down so people felt comfortable riding their bikes, walking, and coming downtown, and it is making a difference. And if you look at all our signs that we're testing after traffic studies that are now stop signs instead of traffic lights, the traffic light arms are still there. And so this is a part of that effort as the streets are to converge to find out the intersections that work best with stop signs in lieu of traffic signs.
Thank you. We have another concern about back to housing for a moment, Mr. Olson.
Okay.
Although city officials and staff say Safe CR works, the program has attempted to take the rights of property owners to rent their property. Should the city be allowed to determine who can own property and who cannot? This question is asking.
Well, I don't think the ordinance determines who owns or who cannot own property, but it does determine that you have to operate in a professional manner your property, whether it's owner-occupied, a commercial property, or a rental unit. And so I think I'm excited about the committee that's being formed to address the issues because we are in the early stages of Safe CR. It needs to be a cooperative effort, and there is no intent to take away property rights as a part of this effort. And I think that what we're trying to do is to make our housing stock as good as possible and as safe as possible and as free of dilapidation as possible. And as we morph the ordinance to work with landlords and owners, hopefully we can make a difference and make the quality of housing stock in all the quadrants and downtown some of the best in the state of Iowa. And I think we can get there through our ordinance and working with the different property owners.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question, please?
This was a little bit long. Yes. Although city officials and staff say Safe CR works, the program has attempted to take away the rights of property owners to rent their property. Should the city be allowed to determine who can own property and who cannot?
Yes, I have been hearing that the city's been saying that it works, but unfortunately, the murders have increased. The extensive crimes have increased. There may be less crimes being reported because people are afraid. They're afraid of being fined for getting police assistance, and that's just a fact. Last year we had 8 murders. This year we have 6 so far, and these are the first 2 years, full years, that this ordinance has been in effect. Prior to that, we had 3 murders. So I don't see it as helping in terms of safety. What has been going on is the property owners, the landlords, they are having their registration pulled. And when that registration is pulled to rent a property, they're not allowed to rent that property. And so that does decrease the property value because they're being forced to sell.
Thank you. Ms. Zilla, this one also is about safety. I think this person is really asking about charging residents for, quote, overuse, unquote, of police services. It says, if our property taxes go for part in police protection and the city wants to charge those with overuse of police services, should taxpayers who don't use police services get a tax break? And I think maybe just a comment here on the policy to charge people for overuse of police services.
Well, we all pay taxes for these services. We also all pay taxes to use roads. So should we start having the people that don't drive get a rebate on their taxes? We need, even if somebody doesn't use the police service directly, their neighbors or other persons using that is creating a safer environment for the people who aren't calling. As far as being charged, then obviously I'm not in favor of that. If there is an issue that there is a lot of calls to a property, then there does need to, we all do need to come together and discuss it and find out what the issue is.
The concept of charging for use of police and other services beyond a certain point is an important part of the nuisance ordinance because unfortunately people don't respond until they start seeing a bill. And in Cedar Rapids, we have 2,100 landlords, 5,900 rental properties, 18,000 rental units. And to date, since 2013, 52 of them have received a bill. And so it is not a prevalent thing, but it is an important part of the enforcement. And it has corrected those properties. Once they started receiving the bill for extra police services, the nuisance disappeared. And the total bill so far in 2 years is $36,000. And so, unfortunately, it's in the ordinance. It's the last ditch effort when somebody doesn't respond, doesn't correct the issues. They're taking police away from other important issues in our community and safety issues. And to me, 52 properties is not abuse.
Thank you. We have a question about the city finances. Is the city fiscally sound, this person is asking, given that the property tax rate has not been raised, bonding is close to its limit, and TIFs have been used extensively? Are city finances sound?
Our city finances are very sound. And because of the flood, we have had to do more bonding than what we'd like to have done, but we are solid. We have the second highest rating you can get. Whenever we sell bonds, it's as low as if we had the original top rating. And we are balancing our budget. The tax levy has remained the same for 7 straight years. We fortunately have had growth in our tax base by new development occurring throughout all portions of the city. And we have some of the highest rankings, and our audits every year are a clean audit. No items. And so I can say now as a member of the Finance Committee for 1.5 years, I'm impressed with our finance department, our city manager. For a city of our size, we're very financially strong.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez?
This is a complicated question to answer in 2 minutes. I think our city can do a lot better. I think they can cut a lot more waste. I think they can find other ways to fund our necessities rather than bonding. We pay an extensive amount of interest each year, and I always see interest as waste of funds. In terms of, the bonding for flood, we've had a lot of money coming in from from the state and federal government, but our city has chosen to take up projects that we really didn't need. The replacement of the public works, the huge fancy library that we bought for $7.5 million when it was assessed at 1.5. $4.8 million of that came from our local option sales tax. So there have been choices made because of the flood. We can't keep using the flood as an excuse to be going in debt.
Thank you. We have a whole different topic. Let's just change our discussion here for a moment. We'd start with Ms. Guzella. Mental health services have taken such a hit at the state level. What suggestions do you have to preserve or improve mental health services for the citizens of Cedar Rapids?
Well, I know that this is more of county funding issue, but one of the things I need to come back to is the Safe CR program. It is a population that's vulnerable to being evicted and causing homelessness. I'm a transitional living specialist for Abbey Health, and I do work with clients who have mental illness issues, and I work with them right in their homes. And I care a lot about these people, and there have been concerns when police are called that they may be evicted. So one of the issues that we can start with in terms of helping that population is to reform the Safe CR program.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
The mental health issue, we are finding out why Lynn County had the best services of any county in the state. And when the new formats have come in with managed care and other things, we've lost a lot of those great services, or that we will be losing them over the next couple of years. And it's facing agencies, from children's agencies. I serve on the Discovery Living Board, and what we're doing on funding for those with mental disabilities, and it's depressing in a way. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if the state system is going to change now, and so what we have to do with the new managed care organizations that are coming online with Medicaid, there's going to be 4 of them taking over on January 1st, we need to be a strong community and work through our nonprofits, work through these managed care agencies to make sure that the quality of service that's provided to those with mental illnesses or health needs is addressed, and that we fight for every dollar we can fund.
Thank you. Let's talk about parks, Mr. Olson. This person says there has been a delay in finishing neighborhood parks with things like splash pads, parking, wilderness areas, and so on. When will the neighborhood parks be completed?
That's a question that I receive from all areas of the community that have smaller parks, that do not have some of the amenities of some of the major parks. And unfortunately, the funding in the Parks Department is very tight. A splash pad costs $250,000 plus operational costs, and so it's difficult to find that kind of funding and operational funding in the parks. And I think what is occurring, and it's a good dialogue, is that a lot of these areas that were maybe parks are not have all the amenities of some of the other parks, is that we need to find a creative way to provide a funding source that we can attack. The same way with streets, the same way with storm, flash flooding issues, the same occurs with our parks. And this is part of the quality of life, and this is what's going to make our neighborhoods strong, and we need to go in and find a way to fund these amenities that are not in some of our city parks.
Thank you. Ms. Guzella, parks.
This is a good question. This is another area where I think it's very important to have good parks because of our families and the needs of our youth. I live over near Old Cherry Hill Park, and I've actually met with Scott and the Parks Department director in regards to some amenities that we would like to have over there, one of them being a splash pad. One way that these can be funded is through our hotel motel tax. The state law allows the hotel motel tax to be able to go toward parks, and so we could be funding it for that if we steer some of that away from some overly priced nonprofits. I do think that there needs to be a better prioritization. I wasn't in favor of destroying our historical Green Square Park. I know that there was a lot of funding donations with that, but we did also put in a great deal of money for that park. I would have rather liked to see that go to neighborhood parks.
Thank you. We have one more question here about development, and this is about Highway 100. How would you maintain the development in the downtown area as development increases with the completion of Highway 100? Ms. Casella.
Well, I see Highway 100 as probably being more of a concern for the businesses in the southwest area over near the Westdale area, because people coming in from the west would be taking Highway 100 and going to the northeast side of the town over near Collins. So one of the things when they were discussing the highway is my concern of business over in the southwest area. Another concern I do have with that is I was told that there would be a lot of increased traffic on some of the roads out in our district, such as E Avenue, and I believe it's M Avenue, which is already a high traffic area and unsafe for the children over there at Jackson School. So we need to be looking at the roads that are going to be affected, and not just the downtown businesses, but also the residential roads, and we need to plan ahead for that.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Highway 100, when it opens, the first phase is 17 and the final phase in 2020, will have the greatest impact of any project in the history of the city on this area, this district. And the city of Cedar Rapids has worked hard to plan ahead to determine where things are developed, how they're developed, how are the trails connected so that people can get from one area and other parks, work some of these traffic issues out. And so it's going to have a tremendous impact on this district. The potential shows that in the next 3 decades, after Highway 100 is completed, that potentially to the west, that could develop into potentially up to 30,000 residents. And, but it's going to take decades. And so we need to be alerted to what's happening, be prepared, and the planning has started, the design has started. There are commercial nodes along each of the intersections, so there will be some commercial development out here in this area, so people don't have to go downtown. And I think it will be a good benefit to this area in the long term.
Thank you. And Mr. Olson, an entirely different question.
Okay.
Now, quite a change again. Gender balance on city boards and commissions. What process is being used or would you suggest to ensure gender balance on city boards and commissions?
This is one area that I highly compliment Mayor Ron Corbett. And he has taken this on as a task personally, since he leads the effort on board appointments before it comes to the city council. And Cedar Rapids has been recognized as having one of the best, if not the best, gender balance efforts in the state of Iowa. And what the mayor is working on is to make sure that we continue to recruit all types of candidates to express an interest in serving on commissions. And then he is doing a very good job to make sure that every commission is gender balanced. And we're not quite there yet because in some of the boards we're having trouble finding volunteers, some of the construction, Housing Board of Appeals and other types of things, but we're getting better at those areas and finding more recruits. And I think that if you were to look back a few years ago and where we are now, we've made major strides. We've got a ways to go, but we're heading the right direction.
Thank you. Ms. Casella.
I have to agree. I think Mayor Corbett's done a good job at creating a better gender balance for our boards and commissions. But I think we need to work on a socioeconomic balance and also a balance for the residents geographically where they're located. We need more people in our district. One of the things also I'd like to see, since we're on the topic, is I'd like to go back to when the whole council interviewed for the boards and commissions. Right now, we have the mayor appointing, and then of course the council approves. And I really liked the idea of the full council interviewing the people who are applying for these positions.
Thank you. We have 2 questions that deal with big changes or important issues coming up for the 4th District. One of these questions asks, what do you think are the top 3 issues that are coming up from the district? The other one puts it a different way a little bit. What is the greatest change coming up for the 4th District in the future? Ms. Gazella, we would start with you. What are the top issues for the 4th District, or perhaps the greatest change you anticipate?
Well, I think is it the biggest need or change that is being planned?
Change.
Well, I think the biggest change that we need is we need to have our roads fixed out here. We need to have that plan changed. We need to be better represented with the roads. There's specific areas in town. Jackson School, the area, has been begging for sidewalks, for some traffic control there at M Avenue and Wiley Boulevard. It is so unsafe for those children. The street is narrow. There's no shoulder, it's a ditch, and with all the road projects that are going on in the city, there's absolutely no reason why they can't make that a priority for the safety of our kids. That's one of the areas I would really be wanting a change to occur in our district.
Well, I think probably the top 3 in my mind is Highway 100, which we talked about will have the greatest impact in the future. I think that we are expanding the trail system that will run in the next 5 years from Morgan Creek, the county park, through Cherry Hill Park, all the way down to the downtown area. And then I agree with Lisa, we need to close the gaps around schools and parks so it's easier for kids in our neighborhoods and families to walk more and to walk to these areas and activities as family activities. And if we can make those 3 changes, the Northwest District will be, and is, one of the top areas to live in our community.
Thank you. This is the last question before closing statements. This question is about city pride. What do you see as Cedar Rapids' strengths? Why did we win the American City Award? Mr. Olson.
Well, we had a very talented group that could sing and dance and do other kinds of things. That was number 1. Number 2, I firmly believe we all are very busy. We drive from home to work and maybe other activities, but we don't appreciate what is happening in this city. And the All-America Award was a recognition that we have made great strides. And we have a can-do attitude now on the city council and our city departments and our city manager, and we are not letting anything stop us. I'm excited about the long-term plan for Paving for Progress so it can stand alone well beyond my service, the stormwater projects, you just working for things in the parks, doing a variety of things. It's an exciting time to be a Cedar Rapidian, and I hope that we all appreciate where we live. I do, and I hope you do, and we can get better, but we need to first understand we have to work together to make it happen.
Thank you, Ms. Gazella.
I know that our city leaders and the downtown area have a great deal of pride in our town. I would like to see it trickle down to the residents, and it's difficult to do when the average person has not been heard in our district. So I think we have some work to do there. We say that we're proud of our culture here, but the artistic sculptures that are going up aren't really characterizing who we are. I would like to see more pride in who we are as a town and as a state, rather than the modern art that really is not representative of who we are. I'd like to be able to recognize more of our artists and have them be included in the design and in these artistic avenues around our development and everything. We have so much talent, and I think that shows a great deal of pride in who we have by including them.
Thank you. I would just like to make one comment, if I may just take the moderator's moment. I have moderated a number of forums, and I have never presented so many questions in a single forum. I think that just speaks so well of the folks who have come here tonight, who are informed, ask questions, really in depth and breadth. So good for you. Pat yourself on the back when you have the moment. Our closing statements, but one more moment before we do that, let me make an announcement. Just a reminder, the election, of course, is coming up November 3rd. There is a satellite voting opportunity, and it is at the Downtown Library and the Lab Library. If you prefer, you may vote tomorrow from 1 to 7 p.m. at one of the libraries. And of course, you can vote at any time at the auditor's office if that one's better for you too. We touched point, if you recall, Mr. Olson got the first word, Ms. Zell will get the final word, which means that our closing statements will begin with Mr. Olson.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this forum to give a chance for Lisa and I to express our views on a variety of issues that impact District 4. And I appreciate all of you being here. That's fantastic to hear about all the questions. I'd like to thank the residents that are here of District 4 for giving me the opportunity to serve on the City Council, the privilege of serving on the City Council for the last 3 3/4 years. I'd like to thank my fellow council members and the mayor for an exciting time, a welcoming group, and it's been a rewarding effort. I also appreciate that I have a rare situation where I have 4 former City Council members and City Commissioners that live in the district, and they've all agreed to support my candidacy. Chuck Swore, Chuck Weineke, Don Carr, Dave Kramer, and many other supporters, including one of my opponents from the board, Boyd Robinson. I'm honored also to serve the veterans and represent the veterans on the City Council. If re-elected, I will work hard to accomplish the goals that I outlined in my flyers you can find at the table as you leave, or what we've talked about here, and I look forward to making District 4 and the City of Cedar Rapids a great place to call home. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Pizzella, before you give your closing statement, I must make a confession. I told you you could vote tomorrow. All day I thought that today is Tuesday. Today is Monday. We can't vote tomorrow. We can't vote till Wednesday. Thank you. Ms. Pizzella.
Well, in my closing statement, I decided that I'm going to read my guest column that was published yesterday in the Gazette, written by me. Have you noticed there's an a lot of people didn't know. I know. Have you noticed there's an anti-establishment fervor spreading across our country? It's because people are aching to be heard and represented. Here in Cedar Rapids, too many people have not had a voice in what's happening in our city government. It's been like a tale of two cities where the peasants exist for the amusement of the aristocrats. Local leaders have forgotten that our community is not bricks and mortar, but people. They support the well-connected, then claim they don't have the money for the community's needs. I envision a community where our leaders represent the people who voted them into office regardless of their affiliation. Where our leaders look for ways to cut unnecessary costs rather than go into further debt. Where those wanting sidewalks in their neighborhoods for the safety of young children near schools and parks can get them, yet elsewhere, where they are not needed, residents aren't forced to have them. Where people needing police assistance can ask for it without any fear of eviction or financial penalty. Where youth and senior programs are held in higher esteem than buying a hotel or redesigning a historical park. And where the needs of a neighborhood are addressed fairly regardless of location within the community. At a recent Stop the Violence forum, a concerned citizen twice asked the mayor to find funds to support youth programming. Both responses reminded me of Richard Gere's tap dance scene from the film Chicago. Had an honest answer been provided, it probably would have sounded something like this. We don't care enough to change our priorities for you. That's the simple truth about government. The money's there, it just depends on how they decide to spend it. Take, for instance, our lost funds for roads. Why roads that are in good condition are being worked on while the worst roads aren't?
End it there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you to both of our candidates, and thank you to